Bridgette, you're back.
We are back.
We
We are
are
back
back.
for part two.
Part two of the 8 elements of partnership, focusing on our strengths, Clifton strengths to be specific. And thank you so much for coming back and doing this 2-part series with me. It's incredible. Thank you. I love it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm excited to get into the last four of
Yes.
what's really important in understanding these partnerships, right? And like we
Yes.
kicked off with our last, knowing ourselves first,
Yes.
understanding ourselves in order to be able to work with others, right?
Right.
We can't if we don't understand ourselves. And then as we grow, as we have teams, as we start working with others, understanding how they show up and how we may complement one another and how we work through, uh, you know,
Yes.
whatever our common mission is, right? As we referenced our first four elements.
Right. Right. So that was knowing ourselves, sharing that mission, fairness, right? And then
Mhm.
trust. Those were the top 4. What is number 5?
Yeah, number five is acceptance.
Mm,
So if we've ever been in, and you can't fix someone, right? You can't change someone.
right.
And so accepting yourself, accepting the other person or persons, um, in order to collaborate, right? In order to,
Yes.
you know, come with. We mentioned a little bit of being humble, right?
Mm,
Acceptance is part of that as well, right? Is that we're not here to change somebody else, but we're here to
right.
successfully collaborate, and so we accept them. We can talk about the things, right, that we might
Right.
see that we could run into. Um, One of the things that Chat GPT is been a good tool is maybe even use that to understand what might be. You could ask, here's the
Mm,
bottom of mine, here's the bottom of theirs, and what could we run into, what could be some of our challenges.
ooh,
um, it won't give you everything, but it'll give you an idea of, okay, what could be the things that would get in our way. And
yeah,
it's just it's one exercise, one thing that could be
right,
done to
right.
address it.
Right. So when you talk about the bottom, that's where so
Mhm.
we our top 5 are what we're strongest in, right? And then it kind of goes
Correct.
from there. So if you're getting and there's 34 attributes or strengths, I think. Is that what it is? Okay.
Correct.
So the
There are
lower
34
you go,
themes.
okay, themes. So the
Mhm.
lower you go, the less strong you're in it. And that
Correct.
could be where there could be some challenges. Is that it?
Right.
Right, okay.
That is
Gotcha.
absolutely it. And it may not even be intentional.
Right.
It may not be intentional how
Yeah,
that shows up, but you can have conversation around it. You can talk about them,
right.
right? And all of these themes, there is a pendulum, right? So some of
Yeah.
it is so strong that we may not see how it could hinder us. And sometimes it is in our blind spot where we don't even see it.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
it, that concept alone, right, is that
Mhm.
self awareness. Again, going back to self awareness to say, oh gosh, oh, I didn't realize I was, showing
Yeah.
up this way. Am I showing up in the best possible version of myself?
Ooh,
And,
yeah.
going back to yourself, but then accepting that of your partner, right? Or someone
Right.
else that you're working with. So, and that goes back to what you had said in our first segment, right? About when we're working with teams and you start to question the team you know, why are they acting this way, or why is this happening? And instead of you come with curiosity, right?
Right.
Go with curiosity and not take assumptions, but accept, right? And
Yeah.
say, okay, they're doing the best that they can right now, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And but be able to talk about it, right? Because it acceptance builds mutual respect. And
Oh,
at the bottom line, everybody wants to be respected, and we all should be respected. So,
yes.
accepting that, and being able to come together and work together is the common mission, as we've talked about, with fairness and trust, and then be able to forgive, which is our next
Mm,
uh, element of a partnership. Is sometimes we make mistakes,
yeah.
right? And in those mistakes, it's how we communicate to one another, that if those when those things happen, right? Because mistakes will happen, things will come up, there'll be something we didn't even know was there,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden it becomes um, a challenge that we have to then let that experience just be part of our growth,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yes.
forgive, sometimes we do need to do that. um and that's how you grow stronger,
Right. Right.
right? You can grow stronger through it. But
Mm,
if the other person is not, you have to think about, how are we all showing up in these at the time that we're working together, right?
right.
So really focusing on those shared goals, and giving grace when we need to, right? When
Yes.
those occasions happen, and we can be authentic. My husband and I were talking about this, right? Is that you can have vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? But that again goes back to that trust,
For sure. For
right?
sure.
If you don't feel that you can trust this person or other people with your vulnerabilities in that state, then it's really hard to get past that, and you have to be able to forgive. And I think of like my long marriage with my husband, right? It's the longest
Mhm.
partnership I have, and I
Yeah.
am so blessed and so happy, right? There's
Yeah.
that he one that there is somebody who has gone through the ups and the downs with me,
Mhm.
and continues to stay there, right? And he has always been the rock. He has always been our foundation to our family, to our three children. And,
Yeah.
I'm forever grateful for our ability to go through life with the ups and the downs, right?
Right.
And we're not always perfect, and asking for forgiveness and being able to work through it is a big part of any partnership, whether it's in a marriage, in a working relationship, or in real estate investing, right? There may be things that we need to give forgiveness and grace to someone
Right.
else.
Right. I like what you said about I like all of it, but there was something you said about reviewing the goals, the mission, and something that going back to Patrick Lencioni, and hopefully I'm not destroying his name, but one of the things that he talks about, I think it's in The Advantage or in one of his books, that's actually the way you should start every single meeting with your team, coworkers, partners. You should always start the first few minutes of every meeting looking at what is your mission, what are your goals, because then everything else that you're talking about is under that light. Everything else that is
I love that.
having that, you're having a conversation, it should be about what is helping you move forward on what your mission statement is, on what your goals are to complete that mission, right? So I think that's huge because I know that there's always so many things going on. If you're working a W-2 and you're trying to build your real estate business, you're moving from one thing to the other, and you've got your family and the kids and your partner and your husband or wife, or right, you've got all the things,
Mhm.
and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm having to transition, right? So I really can be on a work meeting, and now I'm going to my real estate meeting, and I've got all of this stuff going on in my head about all of the things that I'm dealing with at work, and now I'm bringing that with me, right? Not
Absolutely.
intentionally,
Right.
but it's there,
Oh,
it's coming. And it's like, I
oh
gotta
my gosh.
transition, right? I gotta transition. So it's like, ooh, this is a great way to kind of reset my self-awareness. Like I don't even have to even be self-aware in a way, because I could just be like, this is what we do at the beginning of each meeting. I'm going to talk about my mission, what my goals are. So now I can reset my brain and my focus and my intentions on this thing.
I love that. I love that because you're absolutely right. It, all day long, for example, in my work and my W
Yeah.
2, it's problems all day long. So there's a fatigue that happens when you're making decisions. There is such a thing that we have that fatigue. And so if you're coming into a meeting, like for example, my business partner and I, we're going to be working on an operation or our operating agreement, right? As part of
Yeah.
our LLC.
Right.
I keep thinking to myself, we meet at the end of our day, very late for
Yeah.
him and the evening for me. I've already worked a
Yeah.
full day. It's not the right time for us to be talking about what's important to us and how our business is, how we are going to define our operating agreement. And I
Right.
believe we're going to need to talk about when's a good time when we feel refreshed, when we feel like we can think and talk through this and show up in the best version of ourselves
Right.
to have this conversation. I know it's not for me, it's not going to be at 5:30 in the evening after I've already had a day of other problems I've been,
Right.
working through, and I'm
Right.
exhausted. I'm tired. It's not probably the best time. We might need to pick a Saturday morning or
Exactly.
another day where we have fresh, like that ability to show up for one another in a way that allows us to get important things accomplished. And so
Right.
I love that we're talking about this because these are just, I mean, day to day, this is exactly what, I see and run into as well as anybody else who's listening. I hope that, this sparks ideas, this gives you thoughts about how to, you know, really look at our partnerships because it takes time. These things don't
Yes.
happen overnight.
It's true. It's true. And I love, it goes back to when you mentioned forgiveness, giving each other grace, right? And I think that when you say we can't fix somebody, that's something that I've talked about in my W-2. It's like, well, this person that we're talking about, it clearly doesn't seem, because words are important, right? So this person doesn't seem to be living in their strength, right? And so this is why they're asking so many questions. They don't feel, I can imagine that they probably don't feel very empowered right now, because nobody is playing to their strength here. They're not playing to their strength, and nobody's acknowledging this. And so they're feeling probably very overwhelmed and behind, and trying to give this person grace, and also that curiosity, and not making assumptions, like what we talked about in our last session. And it's amazing, because having these conversations with our team, kind of internally, I've seen a change in the way that our team is helping the other team. They
Mm,
I know it can be frustrating, right? So I'm acknowledging how my team feels. And it's like, I understand it can be frustrating. I understand that you're the one who keeps getting all the questions, or I'm getting all the questions. And it feels like it's all on us when it really should be, multiple departments pulling their own weight. The fairness thing, right? We don't feel right now that this is very fair to us. And, why is that? Probably because we're not playing to everybody's strengths here, and unfortunately we have no control over what these other departments are doing. We can only control how we're going to handle this. And that's, at the end of the day, that's how it always is. Whether it's in your W-2 with your partners, all we can control is how we're going to react, how we're going to perceive something. And the meaning in words can vary, right? Because I know I've done that plenty of times where I've said something, and then as I'm saying, I've said it and now we're talking through it. And then I'm thinking, oh, she probably thinks that I'm mad because I'm asking this question, or that I want her to change something. And I don't. I just want to make sure I'm not making her mad because I'm doing this and this. So let me explain why I'm asking this question. And sure enough, when I say, well, the reason why I'm asking this question is because I feel like I could be driving you up the wall doing these things. And so I figured I should just stop and ask you if you want me to do these things instead of just doing it. And then she's like, thank you for that, because I thought you were getting irritated and that's why you were asking. And so all we can do is control ourselves, the way
Yeah.
that we perceive it. And the words that we choose are so important. And so rather than going to that kind of accusatory language, if we want to stay in that curiosity place, what I've learned is maybe say, I wonder if this could be happening. I wonder if this person is doing this because they think XYZ, or it seems like
Hmm.
this to me. I don't know. What do you guys think, or what do you think? So that way it still keeps it in that curiosity, not making assumptions, trying to give everybody grace, but still trying to address the problem, right? Because we can't
Right.
ignore it. We have to say
Right.
something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in those moments when we have to speak very, you know, in the moment, I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Um, I loved that, and this really did make me feel quite special. There was a meeting, right? I had our business partner, and then there was somebody else in the meeting, and we had a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Just he and I, right?
Ah,
And so, the other participant in the meeting would have stayed and kept going, right? But what I appreciated in that moment, and with such grace, he says, "Okay, thank you so much. Did we get everything that was needed? If so, Bridget and I need to cover some things right now that are really important."
uh-huh.
And he gave me that time because he and I have some really important things to address, right?
Right.
But with accepting that, we were here to help this other person, the other person's getting information, but it
Yes.
was needed, right? And there was that respect for me and for us and for our goals, right? What had to get
Right.
accomplished in that during that time with one another. And so, we create those boundaries that are needed, right? But
Yeah.
words and how we go about it, and that in that moment, I probably should have said something to my partner like, "Hey, thanks so much." Right? Like that really meant a lot to me that you're respecting the fact that we have a lot to get through,
Yeah.
and you're you're being very upfront and, clearing that time,
Right.
for us, and being a leader by asking that, okay, if there's nothing else, then we're gonna, I need some
Yeah.
time with Bridget. And that just, it made
Yes.
me feel special, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do we show up for somebody else? And as a leader, sometimes need to, use words properly and nice in a way that,
Mhm.
is effective, but
Yeah.
allow us to really stay on track, right? And
Right.
stay focused. And so, that, to me, in that example, I felt like that respect was there. He respected the other
Mhm.
person. All of those
Yes.
things were there. And it was just, it made, again, as you spend time with somebody, because the time that you're building, especially in real estate investing, right?
Mhm.
Because we don't know much of someone's background, or have spent a lot of time with them. When we're
Right.
in the workplace, we spend a lot of time with one another,
Right.
right? Hours and hours and hours, more than our loved ones, more than our friends and family,
Yeah.
right? And so when we're in a real estate transaction, we very likely may or may not have had that amount of time. And
Yeah.
so, you're building that, and that is critical. So we're leaning into our seventh element of communication, right? Because
Ooh.
we're communicating, right? We're
Yes.
commu- we're communicating even when we're not communicating, if that can make any sense, right? Like,
That's true.
meaning meaning that if you say you're going to do something, right? We kind of went back to this topic, as we had said, but
Yes.
what Gallup says is that partners that communicate, and communicate well, basically thrive. And with a statement like, we rarely misunderstand each other,
Mhm.
or or um that we are good listeners for each other,
Mm. Mm.
right? In that communication. So if you can think of those two statements and say, oh yes, I see that in my partner, right? That we're able
Yes.
to understand each other, and that we also can be good listeners for one another, right?
Yes.
As part of the communication that is needed in any working relationship. um, that communication, and that ability to speak and understand, um, that shared information.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, again, all of these elements or attributes, categories, themes, it's important in a real estate in partnership. It's important in your family, right? Your relationships
Mhm.
with your kids, with your parents, with your partners, in your family, with your coworkers. Um, I've learned so much in communication, about communication, I should say, just being very intentional with the words and the tone, right? Because I've had that over the years. When I was much younger, I am very much uh, uh, about getting things done. Okay, so many of my strengths are in execution.
Mhm. Yeah, me too.
Ah,
Me too.
yes,
Yeah.
execution. I do not. I want to get it done. I want to do whatever I have to do to get it done. I don't want to mess around. I don't want to have a bunch of meetings on meetings on meetings to talk about whatever. It's like, just, we all understand. Let's get the understanding. Who's doing what? Let's do it. Let's move it. Yeah. And so that can come off pushy and harsh and condescending and controlling. And I've heard all of the words. I've heard all of the words. And it kills me to my core when I get that kind of feedback that that's how I'm coming off, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to accomplish the goal, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how am I coming off that way? How am I how am I forgot the term that you use, but like, how am I showing up? That's what you said. How am I showing up? What is the tone that I'm using, right? Because I've had that too, where it's not necessarily what I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it. It's just like, I cannot control the looks on my face and the sound, and that, like, this is too much. I have had that
It
over the,
is.
I've really, really, really worked on it. And I think, maybe part of me is that I've just kind of mellowed out too. I don't know. But I really focused on how I'm showing up in every aspect, and down to the tone of my voice. I'm not saying I'm perfect at all. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I know I've improved over the years in really trying to focus on, how can I help everyone, and achieving what we are working on achieving, and giving the feedback, facing the brutal facts. As I don't remember the author, but in Good to Great, they talk about facing the brutal facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we need to face the brutal facts. We need to be really honest, but not beat somebody over the head with it, right? Like, there was somebody I was working with some years ago, and she's like, I'm just saying the truth. And I looked at her, and so here I am now, the person telling somebody that they're coming off too harsh, which was really ironic for me. And after I got the feedback, right? And I was just like, I get that you're telling the truth. Truth is important, but at the same time, truth is a bitter pill to swallow. And and are you coming from a good place when you're sharing, when you're communicating to somebody? Where is your heart in that? And I think that's why I've improved more over the years, because I'm focusing more from where's my heart in this, and not transactional, if you will. I just need to get the task done, and I'm checking all the boxes, and this needs to, I've stepped back in the way that I'm approaching and saying, okay, we're working together on this. We have some issues here. How do we solve these problems? And we got to be real about what these problems are, because we want real solutions. So I see you're glowing.
I am, because what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is the what we call leadership has changed over time, and it
Yes.
used to be very managers or leaders were, they were expected to have respect, and there were certain things at elements that would show up in the workplace. Now the encouragement is to be, as a leader, a coach, right?
Yes.
And
That's it.
put yourself in the shoes as a coach. You
Exactly.
know your team, you know what their strengths are, and you might
Yes.
know your partner and know what their strengths are. And being able to work with them in a space where it's coaching. You're not dictating and
Exactly.
telling them what to do, because
Exactly.
they have expertise, they have knowledge, they have experience. And now it's a conversation around just embracing that, but coming as a coach and asking
Exactly.
curious questions. Again, you're just coming with curiosity and asking for their expertise. And that just creates a level of respect, because there's that engagement and that dialogue that is liberating. No one wants to just be told what to do.
Mm,
Your expertise, right? Your knowledge, the
right.
reason why you're there, and
Exactly.
leveraging that and being able to come up with the ideas or talk through things together,
Yeah.
you know that's effective. It's not effective to be told what to do. You
Yeah.
want to have you want to have dialogue, so, and in a respectful and healthy conversation that allows for it.
Yes. 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 It's funny. I have been told, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Hmm.
I've been told that. And, when as a leader or manager, it's so easy to fall into telling everybody what to do because it is the fastest way to hopefully get it done, right? Just tell them this is what you need to do, steps one, two, three, and have at it, right? But then the problem is, you create a dependent culture.
Yep. Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
now
Yep.
everybody's coming to you for all the things that they're supposed to do. I had that at one point, and
Yep.
I didn't realize what was happening and my part in that, right? Because I just kept providing the answers, and
Yes.
I would ask them questions, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to get them to step up out of that and to take ownership, because that's the problem. If they're
Yes.
asking you what to do all the time and you're telling them what to do all the time, then they're going to rely on you. And then if you don't give them the answer, then they're not, it's your fault that
Yes.
you didn't give them the answer. And so they're not owning their part of the process. So you
Right.
really have to step back and change the way that you're, and really lead, not manage.
Right.
And that shift is hard. I've talked to my other managers about that. It is so hard. They keep falling into telling their teams what to do, and it's like, okay, but then you get upset because now they're not doing some things that you expect them to do. But did you tell them to do that? Well, they should
Right.
already know. Yeah, but you're already telling them what to do on all these other things. So now it's kind of your fault that you didn't tell them to do this thing, right? You need to back up and coach them through what they know. And they're there for a reason.
Hmm.
And when I had a person tell me, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, and I was like, I'm never going to tell you what to do. I'm never
Dan
ever going to
Mart.
tell you what to
Yeah.
do. And they looked at me
Dan
like,
Martell.
what? You're not going to tell me what? I'm like, no. No, I'm sorry, but you've seen me ask you questions. Every time you ask me a question, I'm asking you a question back. There's a reason for that. I am happy, happy, happy anytime to walk through this with you, to brainstorm, to think about how it could be. What if we do this? What if we do that? But I'm not going to tell you what to do because
Yeah.
you've got all these years of experience.
Dan Martell does an amazing job of that expectation, right? Of
I love
saying,
Dan. Yep.
when you come with said problem, right? Because there's going to be challenges, problems, what have you, come with some ideas of what are the potential solutions, right? May
Exactly.
not be the number one choice, but
Right.
come with some solutions. Do not go to someone and expect that they're going to solve it. Come
Right.
with some ideas. Be a natural, personal leader of your own,
We're
you
all
know,
leaders.
right. We all are. And when we
Yes.
show up with, okay, here's some potential solutions. Don't know if this is it, but here, let me throw it out there.
Yeah.
Or maybe you know of a better solution, but here's some ideas that I have. And you come with
Yes.
those, right? People notice that. Leaders notice that you're not just coming with the, oh, give me the answer. You're coming with solutions. And then
Exactly.
maybe you've got the one that would work. Maybe the other person says, I've ran into this before, and let's
Mhm.
here's some other options. What do you think of these as well? Which one are you most comfortable with? Which one do you feel
Yes.
like you could really have, that the potential answer, right? And
Right.
so encouraging them to come with ideas versus you just dictating the potential answer, them coming with
Yes.
some solutions. Absolutely, it makes for a healthy conversation and
Right.
natural leaders, right? Creating
Right. I
natural
love
leader.
that. Yeah, 2 things that somebody told me, and now I'm dating myself, but 30 some odd years ago,
Mhm.
when I was first starting out, and one thing was exactly like what you said, come with solutions. A manager does not wanna hear, um a problem without you coming up with at least 2 or 3 ideas of
Yep.
your own. That's where
Yep.
you're gonna set yourself apart from everybody else. That was one piece of advice. The other piece of advice was when you keep coming with problems, all you sound like is a complainer, right? So it goes back to
Mhm.
if you have a problem, what are some ideas? What are the so it kind of goes together. So I even to this day I've shared that with other people. It's like I'm sorry, but I totally get and I appreciate, I respect the need to have that moment where you're just like, what the fuck? Like, what is wrong? Why can't this work? And you have your moment that, your frustration, your aggravation, you can have that. I it drove me crazy when I would talk to a manager at a place I worked at, and she never would acknowledge the problem and how it made people feel. It was always their cheerleader mode and we're going to make this work and this is so great. And it's like, can you just take one moment to acknowledge what is happening right now, though, and how it makes us feel? This sucks. This totally sucks right now. Can we just have 3 minutes of, and just get it all out there? And then once we have our moment to vent, then we can say, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And now we can start solving the problem and coming up with ideas. But the person that all they do is complain and they're not providing any solutions or ideas, and that seems to be how they're always showing up, that to me is a total energy sucker.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the last element of our partnership is unselfishness, right? And it's a bit of
Ooh,
selfishness when you're coming with just like over and over and over again instead of
yes.
like looking at it as you're prioritizing the shared success, right?
Yeah.
And that doing that with the other person also as being recognized, right, in this, and that you're, because unfortunately, you'll run into people who will just take, right, and
Yes,
not think about your needs, and they will just
exactly.
continue to do that. And whether it's a control issue,
Yeah,
um a selfish issue, who
yeah,
knows, right? You don't really know. But a good partner needs to be a bit unselfish and realize
yes,
that, hey, guess what? Your partner also has needs, right? And that you
right.
both have that sense of, achievement together, that you're both getting something out of the partnership, right?
Yes,
And I this most recent partner, right? I felt like that breath of fresh air where it was this,
yeah,
oh yeah, we can do this. It's, I'd create an LLC with you, and
yeah,
let's like, it felt so it was a breath of fresh air, because I've
yes,
encountered others, right, that may not sit in that space of equal share, right, of saying,
right,
you're going to also benefit from all the hard work that you're doing, right?
right.
Um, and so having that unselfishness, that capacity, right? That
Mhm.
capacity to think about the other person that is also putting in effort, putting in
Right.
work, right? And that shared success together, right, can um, create that
Yes,
excitement. I think there's just, it's so beautiful when you find that person who is building trust with you, right? Deepens your
mhm,
connection with one another,
right,
right? Because you care about the other person. And
exactly.
that is important. That respect and that care, can help deepen that connection and help, create success for partnership.
Yes, yes. I think that goes when you say respect and care for the that partner, it reminds me of going back to what is your mission? What are your core values?
Yep.
Right? And thinking about, because for me, that's always been a big part of my core values, wherever I've worked out with my team and in our partnership that I have. It's how are we going to behave, right? You have
Mhm.
your company culture, and there's the mission statement, the vision, but the core values are how are you going to behave. And that's what you default to, that's what you go back to in any given situation. When there's a problem, it's like, okay, well, one of our core values is integrity. So are we showing up with integrity here? And if we're not, then we need to fix that. And then that way it's not necessarily an attack again on anybody. It's this is how we're going to show up. And this is what we signed up for.
Yep.
So our core values that we agree on as a partner at the very beginning, our mission, our core values, our goals, um it all ties together, it's all interweaved,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Like my partnership and the focus in sober living, right? And
Yeah.
knowing our mission, knowing that we're serving people through affordable living, but in an
Yes.
environment that is supportive, right? That
Hmm.
I never thought that real estate would be in this space that I could do this.
I know. Yeah.
And that's what's so powerful, right? Is knowing that what we do, how we show up, and that when
Yeah.
I find the right person who's going to do that with me, how much more I can accomplish with that person where I
Right.
myself alone couldn't do it. I need,
Absolutely.
right? I need somebody else to help me get through it. And
Yeah.
we'll go further together than if I tried to do it by myself. I will
Okay.
not get as far.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love this. So we've gone through the 8 elements.
Yes.
This is amazing. So, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Okay.
My
How
pleasure.
do people get a hold of you? Because you are a Clifton Strengths coach. You can work individually, you can work with teams, you can work
Right.
with the partnerships. How do people get with you?
So Instagram is
Yeah.
one way,
Okay.
and that's my last name. So
Okay.
Ruiz, Ruiz_Bridgette is how
Okay.
you can find me there. LinkedIn, I've had a very, a longer career in the
Yeah.
professional corporate space. So I've got a pretty healthy LinkedIn. So you're always able to find me just with Bridgette Ruiz. I think you can kind
Okay.
of do the search to
Yeah.
find just by my first and last name. Uh,
Awesome.
and yeah, and happy to help because I do, like many entrepreneurs, we have multiple passions and love, and this is kind of the third one that I sit in is building phenomenal high performing teams and seeing that just makes I adore seeing talent. I adore seeing people at their best, and then
Yeah.
just encouraging that you can do things with knowing very targeted your themes and how to apply them
Right.
that best suit you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and just looking at the book, right? It said, you're going to be happier, you're going to be more productive, right? So know your strengths, play to your strengths, know your partner's strengths, play to their strengths. So that's how everybody gets a hold of you for strengths and that coaching and looking at your teams, your partnerships, but you're also a capital raiser. So anybody
Mhm.
looking for funding, hit Bridgette up. And then also you mentioned sober living. So I mean, I know a lot of people that are also passionate about sober living. And so I'm sure you'd be willing to answer questions on that and connect with other
Absolutely.
people in that area too. So thank you so much. Maybe we'll
You're
do a part
welcome.
3 on something. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about.
Oh, I know. This is such a fun space. So I'm always
Yes.
happy. Yep, happy to continue the
Awesome.
dialogue.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Oh, I just saw